Hey guys, welcome back. This is the story about what if Naruto was a hollow. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel and like the video as well, it really means a lot. So let's start the what if. The Konoha Association was ready for battle. Sakura walked through the hallways of the Seirete, her Shinigami robes billowing as she walked. It was mere hours before her promotion to the Zero Division, before her bones would officially become the Uken. When that happened, she could officially betray the Soul Society in favor of Naruto's invasion, but even then she didn't have much of a part in it until the grand finale. But first, she needed to remove some of the adversaries that Naruto would have to face, even without his express permission. Split up the forces, to be put more casually. She had created that Garganta-esque Kido spell just a few years ago, and that is how she was able to be promoted to the Royal Guard. She had always remained distant from the Konoha Association, and they had always remained distant from her. But when she announced to the world just a few weeks ago that she had cracked the secret to a Garganta, they had contacted her for the first time. They had gotten a warrant for an invasion of Huecomundo decades ago, but the problem of the Garganta had always loomed directly over their heads. With it finally solved, they could extract justice from Konoha's destroyers. And that was exactly what Sakura wanted. There were many members of the Konoha Association, and many of them were elite Shinigami. Minato and Kushina in particular, were among the strongest Shinigami in the Soul Society, beaten only by Yamamoto, and although they didn't know it, herself. She had coordinated this perfectly. Set up an alliance with Naruto's force while making sure that the Konoha Association would invade Huecomundo. Best case scenario, they remove them indefinitely. Worst case, they still have enough time to bide in order to split the enemy's forces in two. Although they didn't know it, they had played right into her hand. She was on her way right now to set up the preparations for their passage to Huecomundo, just as she was sure that Naruto was setting up his preparations. They were sure to miss each other. She opened the door to the association's meeting hall, which had to be renovated over the years. It was now a massive auditorium, where the members of the association would sit around in a circle. The leaders and more higher-ranking members would be seating near the front, and they were the ones who would be leading the charge. The association had grown quite a bit over the years, as more and more villagers from Konoha made it there. And yet, the association had never found Naruto. The thought seemed to depress Minato, even more so than when he learned of Konoha's actions on his corpse, as well as Kakashi's death within Huecomundo. All the more reason to invade it. One of their comrades had been killed by Hollow's. Sakura didn't understand why they hadn't figured out the truth yet. Perhaps they were too caught up in their own pride to realize it. She took a seat at the end of the chairman's table, rudely putting her feet up on the table. The others didn't bat an eyelash at her behavior, they were too eager to get things done. There was a blackboard at the front of the room, clearly they had been discussing tactics before she got here. Minato was leading the organization of this attack, and the entire association would be invading Huecomundo. That was hundreds of Shinigami, many of them talented. It was odd, when they were shinobi they were used to sending out teams of no more than 5. Now they were leading a squad of many more numbers at the same time, and yet Minato was not being overwhelmed by having all of them at his command. They seemed to be almost done with their meeting, which meant that all that needed to be done now was the opening of the Garganta. And the 12th Division says they've pinpointed the location where Vulpes Sea is, or at least where he took the Konoha villagers many years ago. It is likely that the Hollow is not there anymore, nor is his army. Regardless, we should be able to find some clues as to their whereabouts once we reach Huecomundo. Minato explained. Question? Shikamaru asked, raising his hand. Yes, Shikamaru. Who will be participating in this invasion? Everyone. We are using the full force of the Konoha Association to invade Huecomundo and achieve our goals. The only one who will be absent from the attack shall be Sakura herself, who is to remain and perform the Garganta Kido. Speaking of. He trailed off, leading into the next step of the planning. The final step. Sakura, are your preparations done? Are you prepared to lead us into Huecomundo, at the spot of Vulpes Sea's hideout? Minato asked. Sakura smiled deviously. The Garganta opened a portal on the Sons of Huecomundo, and the 15 to 20 chairmen of the Konoha Association, as well as the lesser-seated and unseated Shinigami of the association were deposited onto the desert Sons on Huecomundo. It may have seemed like a low number, considering they were apt to take on the entirety of Huecomundo itself, but with their power, they could perhaps pull it off. Sakura had gotten the coordinates of the area correctly. They had been deposited outside of a very suspicious-looking palace, but the place looked fairly abandoned. Minato cleared his throat and turned to address the entire group. His riveting speeches had proven to unify the massive number of Shinigami in the past, and his skill as a captain meant he had the power to command them. Okay, everyone, we have reached our destination. This is the area where the Ryatsu samples have pointed to. This is the area where Vulpes C supposedly made his hideout. Looks more like a palace than a hideout to me, Minato. Jiraiya piped up from the front of the line, staring up at the palace. Minato grinned. Yeah, his hideout. However, we must be prepared for the possibility Vulpes C does not reside here anymore. Even if he does not, there may be some clues here so we can determine his true whereabouts. For now, enter the attack formation. The Shinigami of the Konoha Association cheered, their Zanpakutos thrust into the air in a battle cry. Minato turned around, as two members of the association opened the large gate barring their access to the palace. If Vulpes C was here, the security was very lax. When the gates were fully open, Minato directed the Shinigami in. Okay, let's go. In all honesty, they were prepared for anything in there. Vulpes C apparently had a ton of hollows underneath his command, which they had taken into account during their invasion plans. Go, go! Find the enemy! Kushina shouted from the back, directing the Shinigami inside the gates. When the last one had breached the area, she flashed over to her husband. I can tell already, this place is completely abandoned. That surprise attack worked for nothing, we're not going to find anything here. She commented. Minato looked contemplative. The Shinigami were milling around uncomfortably, seemingly looking for any enemy they could attack. Nothing sprouted up. What do you think we should do, Minato? Investigate the area? Jiraiya said, walking up to the husband and wife pair. Send us. We'll make sure to find any clues, came a voice from the crowd, as Inuzuka Kiba emerged from the crowd of Shinigami, along with the two Hyuga cousins, as well as everyone else from his oldest son's generation. The Hyuga cousins had lost the ability to use the Byakugan, and Kiba didn't have Akamaru with him any longer, but they still were specialists in the tracking field. Minato looked around the group. Hinata, Kiba, Niji, Shikamaru, and Ino. The five of them were all ranked at various levels within their division, but that did not mean they were at the level of their rank. Rather, they were all vice-captain level or above, which meant that we're one of the most elite groups within the Konoha Association. Okay, you guys. That sounds conducive to the plan. Report back here immediately if you find anything worth checking out. We'll see if we can get a lead on Vulpes C's trail. Minato said. While the Konoha Association was searching for Vulpes C's trail within the Huecomundo, a gigantic portal had opened up in the skies above western Rukongai, directly near the Seireite. It was the exact area where Ichigo and company had infiltrated Soul Society several years before. Incursion signal outside West Wall. I repeat, incursion signal outside West Wall. Soul Society is now on alert. A mandatory captains meeting will take place in approximately 10 minutes. All available captains report to the 1st Division barracks immediately. An alarm from within Seireite sounded, which could be heard by the entirety of the Shinigami force. The gate fell as the portal widened above the skies of Soul Society, and 10 streaks of light rocketed from the depths of the portal, crashing to earth into western Rukongai. Shinigami ran to and fro after they heard the announcement of the incursion, filling out their various duties as the captains flocked to the barracks of the 1st Division. Meanwhile, the citizens of Rukongai, the normal souls, gathered around the site of the impact, watching it warily as the dust began to clear. Naruto stretched his arms, getting the kinks out of him as he climbed out of the hole first. The other Espada took a few more moments. So this is Soul Society, huh? Although we have a few secret outposts here, I've never actually been. Doesn't seem like a very nice place, does it? He said to himself, as the people began to crowd around him. What's going on? Who are you guys? A brave man asked, approaching Naruto as he got out of the crater, taking in his odd clothing and the mask fragment on his face. Naruto stared at him as if he were stupid, a condescending grin on his face and bloodshot eyes. Quick as a flash, he drew his zanpakuto and cleaved off the man's legs from underneath him, allowing him to crumple out on the ground and bleed to death from his stumps of legs. These guys aren't even close to being Shinigami. Naruto noted, sheathing his zanpakuto as Ulquiorra and the other Espada climbed out of the crater themselves. Of course not. We are in Rakangai at the moment. The Seireitei would be over there. Ulquiorra commented, pointing to the area where there was an enormous gate blocking the way. Ah, that would be the gate? It's made of Seki stone, so we'll have to open it. Fortunately, we have more than enough muscle to take care of that, so no problems. Once it's open, we call the rest of the force. So, let's go. Naruto led the charge as the other 9 Espada fell into step behind him, casually walking up to the gate. A large shadow fell over them, and all 10 of them looked up, unimpressed, as an enormous man leapt over the wall and crashed down in front of them, creating a large shockwave. Oh? Ryoka? Haven't had any unauthorized intruders since the incident with the Ichigo boy. But no matter, the fact that you're here means you seek access to Seireitei without a pass. Since it's my job to deal with unauthorized intruders, Jidenbo will stop you here. The giant said, pulling out 2 axes from his coat. We're fighting already? Baragon piped up. Naruto still looked unimpressed. I guess so. Yami, take care of this, will you? And when you're done, open the gate for us as well. Naruto ordered. Yami flexed his muscles, ripping his Arrancar robe slightly. You got it, the Decimus said, taking the forefront, while the others backed off. You're up first, eh? Then you'll be the first to go, Shrimpy. Jidenbo said. Hey, no one's call me Shrimpy to my face, fat ass. You're just asking to die. Yami shouted back, pounding his fists together. Jidenbo swung his giant axe to the side in a great display of strength, trying to crush Yami where he stood. Yami just clenched his fist in response, throwing a punch forward to meet the axe. The axe impacted Yami's fist, and it didn't even come close to breaking through his arrow. Rather, Yami pressed the attack, shattering the axes into a million pieces. Wah! Impossible! Jidenbo said. Ichigo had shattered the blades before, but he still had the handles. This guy straight up obliterated his axes, to the point of no return. You don't have time to mourn over your weapons. Yami shouted, charging up a Siro in his fists. He shot it upward, and Jidenbo screamed as the blast engulfed him, burning a lethal hole in his torso. Jidenbo flopped uselessly against the gate, blood pouring from his wound as his thrashes got weaker and weaker. With the gatekeeper out of the wall, Yami grabbed the bottom of the gate with one hand, and threw it up with so much force that it jammed and got stuck open. Minato-sama! Minato turned around as he heard a heavily breathing voice get closer to him. Kiba was rushing up to him as fast as he could go, a sign that he apparently had news for him. The other members of the search party were also running up from behind, though not as quickly as Kiba was. What it is, you guys? Have you found anything? Kiba caught his breath really quick, gasping for air. This was important news. We've found people. Kiba announced to his leader, and Minato raised an eyebrow. What do you mean, you found people? Are they Arrancar? Minato asked. That was the most obvious explanation, because Arrancar were humanoid most of the time. No, they're not Arrancar. One of them seems to be a Shinigami, and the other seems to be a human. You have to come with us, we'll show you where they are. Kiba said. Lead the way. Minato agreed, motioning to the other leaders of the group to follow them, while ordering the lower-ranking members of the association to stand idle. Kiba brought the group to what seemed to be an abandoned arena within the confines of the palace. Minato didn't realize that sporting events were held within Hueco but he got the feeling that he wouldn't like whatever he found in there. Rin was darting her eyes around to and fro, apparently looking at the architecture of the building. Minato had to admit that it was well made, as he walked into the main part of the arena. The bleachers were currently above him, and they had made their way down onto the floor of the arena, where the games would take place, apparently. Indeed, there were in fact 2 people here, who had apparently made this place a temporary home of sorts. But they weren't just ordinary people. Minato recognized them immediately. You're Kurosaki Ichigo. Minato commented, noticing that the boy hadn't changed a day from over 10 years ago. Beside him was a grown woman of around 26, but he easily recognized her as Inoue Orihime. And Inoue Orihime. What are you two doing here? Minato asked incredulously, as both humans looked at them for the first time. Ichigo was the first to speak. It took him a little while to remember, seeing as he squinted his eyes for a few seconds, but it clicked with him before long. Minato-san? Kushina-san? And all of you guys, he said, recognizing a few of them within the group, such as Shikamaru. A few other members recognized him back, and they talked amongst themselves for a second. Kurosaki-san, how long have you been here? Oh, I see. It's been so long since we invaded Las Noches. I mean, Kakashi-san died in the invasion, so you must have assumed that I did as well, seeing that I did not make it back. I got stranded in Hueco all those years ago, when all of my friends died, and have been trying to eke out an existence ever since. Ichigo explained. The company's eyes softened significantly. Well, we can take you back, Ichigo, when we have finished up our business here. We were all hurt deeply by Kakashi's death, but at least there is one survivor from that day. But right now, we are on official business, tracking down the one who destroyed Konoha. Kushina piped up. Konoha, that's the village you all lived in while you were alive, correct? Orihime said, joining into the conversation. Minato nodded. Yes, it was destroyed a long time ago. We have a culprit, but we never figured out just how it was destroyed or what happened to the villages, hence part of the reason for our invasion. Minato explained. This may sound strange. Ichigo added. But, while we were living here, we met someone from Konoha, and we, at least somewhat learned what happened to it. The company perked up at that, and Minato pressured. You mean there was someone from Konoha who was still alive? Where are they now? Minato asked. It's probably best I take this one from the top. We arrived here a few days ago on our vagabond, and almost immediately discovered that this place. He patted the ground. Was a trapdoor. We managed to open the thing, but when we did, this girl crawled out of the hole. She was covered in blood and completely insane, and I could only understand pieces of what she was saying. Apparently she was taken there and held against her will, but she talked about killing creatures or something a lot too. After that, she took my sword when my guard was down and killed herself almost instantly. Ichigo admitted. They could tell that he was fairly torn up over the whole thing. The company deflated, but Minato had one final thing to ask Ichigo. Did she mention anything about who did this to her, and where that hollow might be? Minato asked, a dangerous tone in his voice. Reignited feelings of anger burst forth, and he was prepared to possibly find the culprit. Ichigo thought about that for a moment, closing his eyes and thinking. She did repeat this one name over and over. Said something about how he put her down there, and I don't know, but there was something about him that linked her capture and the strange creatures she mentioned. Minato felt a bead of sweat roll down his face. What was the name? Was it Vulpes C? No, it wasn't a codename or anything like that. He trailed off. I believe the name was Naruto. This could be a sign of invasion. We must not forget the Ryoka incident of 10 years ago. Although we gained a powerful ally, that was also the most devastating invasion of the century, excluding Aizen's war. We must not let our guard down. Yamamoto riveted, as he held the captain's meeting with 10 of the 13 current captains. Yamamoto was about to continue, but there was a crash in the distance, jolting the captain's attention, and an alarm went off almost immediately after the fact. Emergency alert! Emergency alert! Invaders within the Seireitei. I repeat, invaders within the Seireitei. All squads, take defensive positions. I repeat, take defensive positions. What the? Kiraku said. Ryoka? Kenpachi commented, seeming a little excited. So we are being invaded. That renders this captain's meeting pointless. I'm dismissing all of you here. Return to your divisions and take defensive wartime measures. Also, due to the current absence of 3rd Division Captain Uzumaki Kushina, 5th Division Captain Namikaze Minato, and 9th Division Captain Jiraiya, as well as the entire Konoha Association, I am nulling the restriction on Zanpakuto release for Captain Class personnel. All those who are Captain Class are to consider this invasion with special wartime procedures. That is all. Yamamoto banged his staff, bringing an end to the meeting as the captains filed out of the barracks. The war had begun. After Yami had outright jammed the western gate on its hinges, Naruto gave out a sharp whistle. As soon as he did that, another portal, identical to the last one, opened directly above their heads. Naruto then turned to the rest of the Espada. I've given the invasion force the order to slaughter any Shinigami they come across, but have ordered them to flee on sight should they encounter a captain. Defeating the captains is our first priority, and should be limited to the members of the Espada. Slaughter every Shinigami you come across, but search for the captains at all times, and crush them. Ulquiorra. Naruto motioned to his right hand, who brought out a stack of papers and handed them to Naruto. Naruto flipped through them for a few seconds, before pulling one out and showing it to the group. 1st Division Captain and Sotaicho, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. If you encounter him, flee on sight. I will be the one to hunt him down. Also. He flipped through the papers again. 5th Division Captain, Namikaze Minato. You may engage the target if you wish, but you will leave him alive and in suitable fighting condition. Everyone else is fair game for all of you. Keep that in mind. Naruto explained. The Espada nodded at their commander. Once you have defeated a captain, you will move on to stage 2 of the plan. You will find their key, and bring it to the Tsukioku Hill at the end of the invasion. Naruto explained, before he walked ahead of the group and inside the Seireitei. Arrancar were beginning to spill out of the portal, ready to invade as well. Some low-ranked Shinigami had already come to meet them, their swords out and at the ready. Naruto grinned, before he fired a quick zero on all of them, tracing the beam across each of their heads. When it was over, around 10 or so Shinigami lay dead in front of them, the first casualties of the war. I'll leave you guys here. Begin the attack. Naruto shouted. The Espada flashed out of existence as soon as Naruto gave his order, preparing to go to their own random direction within the Seireitei, searching for a captain to hunt. Arrancar poured into the Seireitei through the open gate, mowing down any Shinigami who would dare get in their way. It made sense in a way. The average Shinigami was pitifully weak, something an average Arrancar in his army would have no trouble dispatching of. He had left the force of regular hollows on standby for now. They would come into play during stage 2 of the plan. I'd best get in on some of this action myself. Naruto noted, before he flashed away much like the other Espada. With the crowd of Arrancar closing in, the normal Shinigami would never be able to pick him out as their leader. As he used Sonido to get up on the rooftops, he noticed that a few fires had already been started within Seireitei. There was a loud crash, and a building a distance away collapsed from under him. He heard laughing, and Yami jumped onto the roof, reveling in the destruction he caused to a few dead Shinigami. He was firing bala from the rooftop, before he jumped in the air to levitate there as a swing from a zanpakuto almost caught him. He hung up and spammed more bala. Figures that he would be the one to make him the most noticeable, but when he looked down on the street directly below him, he saw Grimmjow effortlessly slashing through Shinigami who were running to and fro, trying to make sense of the unexpected invasion while fulfilling their duties. "Hurry, it's a Ryoka. Kill it. Don't let him escape," the Shinigami cried. Naruto scoffed, like any of them could be able to match Grimmjow in speed. They should be running away right now, not trying to engage their target. They might have lived longer. Can this even be called a Ryoka invasion? There are so many Arrancar attacking, another one cried, before Grimmjow bisected him down the middle, as other Shinigami began to get discouraged. "It doesn't matter. Defend the Seireitei. Lay down your lives if you have to," a particularly zealous Shinigami said, somewhere down there. Before long, he was killed as well. Naruto moved away from the scene as he heard cries of pain as their lives were cut short. He had a Sotaicho to find, but first, he would engage on a little fun himself. He hoped he could find someone, anyone he had known from Konoha before he made his way to the First Division. He could kill random Shinigami all day long and be satisfied with his work, but what he really longed for was someone from Konoha to battle with. And kill, he couldn't forget kill. Like Grimmjow, he himself descended into the streets, as Shinigami ran every direction. Ones who were near enough to him all stopped when he randomly appeared in front of them, his hands in his pockets. "Tell me," he said dangerously all of a sudden, to the group of Shinigami. "Do you know where I can find anyone from Konoha?" he asked the Shinigami who were warily approaching him. Something clicked within their heads, and they drew their zanpakutos. "What do you want with Minato-sama, Ryoka scum?" asked one of the Shinigami, Minato being the forefront person from Konoha who came to their minds. Naruto picked up on that. "Minato-sama?" Naruto mocked incredulously. "You really worship that asshole around here, don't you?" "Shut up. Minato-sama is a great man. Greater than you'll ever be, Ryoka," another Shinigami pointed out. "I don't care about that, but it's clear that you're not going to tell me where he nor anyone from Konoha is. I'm done with you people now," he said, drawing his zanpakuto. Within an instant, he had cut down all of the Shinigami in front of him. They cried out in pain as they flopped to the ground uselessly, and in just a moment blood had covered the streets like a puddle from their combined wounds, soaking Naruto's sandals in the liquid. He launched a quick bala at another Shinigami who was rushing at him from afar, and quickly sidestepped and punched a hole in a Shinigami who was looking to attack him from behind. "Now, where is the old fart?" Naruto asked himself. The most obvious solution would be at the First Division's headquarters, but to be sure he focused in on his pesquisa, trying to find the strongest Ryatsu within Soul Society. He could even sense a little bit of residual Ryatsu. He knew where his espada were around the Soul Society, but he wondered if the people who came here from Konoha had a different Ryatsu, one that he could pick out. For now, he just hoped he would bump into one person from Konoha. If he found one, he could find the rest. Sale was out of his element here. He wasn't used to going to war, to actually be on the front lines fighting a battle. He had no fraction with him, and no time to prepare the usage of any of his nasty inventions. He flipped through the copy of the catalog that Naruto had given him on the way Soul Society works, and from the first instance he knew which division and which captain he was going to target. The 12th Division, and Kuratsuchi Mayuri Taicho. Mayuri was a scientist like him, and it was clear to him that he probably thought in a similar way when it came to battle at least. He preferred to take action from the sidelines, using his intelligence and preparation of traps to win. Yet, the 12th Division's captain didn't have any information on Naruto's Arrancar force yet, which meant that he was also unable to prepare for the incident. He had studied the intricacies of Soul Society well before coming here. He would skip the barracks of the 12th Division and head straight for the Shinigami Research and Development Bureau, straight into the lab. Kuratsuchi Mayuri would most likely be there. The novena picked around a corner, eyeing the entrance to the bureau itself, and the several labs that lie within its depths. There were no guards stationed outside, most likely they were off fulfilling other orders in wake of the invasion. Seriously, they leave one of the most important areas in Seireitei unguarded at a time like this. Next they'll leave the medical wing unprotected. But, this works in favor for me. While Sale contemplated how he was going to do things, the interior of the lab was a war zone itself. Researchers of the division were at monitors, madly screaming numbers and data at the top of their lungs as they attempted to find the Ryatsu signals of Aaronkar. The alarm was going off as the researchers picked up red and blue blips on their radar, showing the invasion in many different areas. We've picked up 14 Aaronkar near the 7th Division's barracks. One of them is really going wild over there, it looks like. It's of a crimson color. The rest are colored blue. Shit, how many are there? The third seat Akon said. He reached over to yell at Rin. Rin, what's the status on the perimeter outside the bureau itself? He ordered to the young man seated at the monitor in the corner, who seemingly wasn't paying attention until he got yelled at by his superior. Yes, sir. There seems to be. He ate his words as a blip of crimson light showed itself on his monitor. Wait, we've got one. There's an Aaronkar directly outside the bureau, colored crimson. It's in. Rin was cut off, as the wall of the lab was suddenly carved apart from the outside, throwing the researchers off and creating even more tension within the room. The section of wall that had been cut apart suddenly fell, crushing several researchers as well as snapping the cords to several of their tracking monitors that they were using to locate the Aaronkar. Well. It seems that your captain isn't here at the moment. No matter, my assignment is also to kill any Shinigami I come across, and I also want to take a look for myself on the strides Soul Society has made on science. Though. He looked around the room as the researchers got out of their seats and warily backed away from Sale. It seems that there's nothing of importance within this room, which means I can fight here without really harming anything of value. If I could get to your captain's specimen room though, then it would be a different story. But, for now, I'm afraid you guys are going to be the sacrificial deaths to draw your captain out of hiding. Ta-ta. Sale said. Quick, get Kuratsuchi Taicho. Akon shouted at a random researcher. Sale gave Akon a seductive smirk, placing one of his gloved hands on the hilt of his sword, drawing his Zanpakuto. With a quick flash, Sale intercepted the researcher, cleaving him down the chest while also destroying several monitors and chairs directly behind. Akon and several other researchers winced at both their dead comrade and the destroyed equipment before Sale turned to them. You are so predictable, how did you even become qualified researchers? If you worked for me, well, let's just say you'd all have been turned into edible fraction by now. Not that I don't do that even with my valuable subordinates. Sale mused, flicking his Zanpakuto across another row of monitors. The researchers backed away. You are all so very droll, and I'm not much of a fighter, mind. I think I'll finish up with you quickly, and then focus my other efforts on finding your captain. I'm particularly interested in dealing with him, you see. Chatted Sale casually. But, first. He trailed off, holding his Zanpakuto to his mouth before opening it. Sip. He shoved the blade down his throat. For Nicaris. I understand. I will head out to battle. That was the voice of Kachiki Byakuya, who was sitting in his office, completing a report on the Ryoka invasion. A messenger kneeled in front of him, relaying the message that all captains were now required out on the battlefield. Shinigami were being slaughtered in massive amounts of numbers, and the purpose to the Ryoka's invasion had not yet been determined. Unfortunately, Kachiki Taicho, we are currently missing 3 captains as well as several of Soul Society's greatest fighters. The Kido Corps is also currently missing its leader, so they cannot take action at the moment as well. To compensate, the remaining 10 captains must take on the duties of all the missing divisions, and efficiently run Seireitei's defensive tactics. This is a direct order from 1st Division Captain and Captain Commander of the Godei 13, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. The messenger also explained. The Kido Corps is inactive. Haruno Taicho rarely takes action with her division, but during a wartime crisis even she must have been ordered to join the battle. If I may inquire as to the business of the Kido Corps? Byakuya asked. Yes, sir. Apparently, with her creation of the Garganta-based Kido that allowed the Konoha Association to invade Hueco she has been promoted. She is currently undergoing a ceremony within the Ryokyu to be promoted to the Royal Guard. Byakuya sighed. And such an event had to happen on a truly momentous occasion. A pity, he said distantly, as he dismissed the messenger, standing up from his desk. Kuchiki Taicho, one of Byakuya's subordinates, barged into the office, covered in blood. Byakuya was just finishing strapping his zanpakuto to his hip. The 6th Division is under attack. 4 soldiers have died within the 5th district, he cried, falling to his knees. Byakuya remained stoic. I am aware, I have felt the Ryatsu blanketing this place for several minutes. I am about to head out myself and engage the enemy. You relay this order to the rest of the division. Have groups 3 and 6 go support the 13th Division, and groups 2 and 5 are to engage with any enemy contact around the vicinity of the 6th Division's barracks, he ordered. Yes, sir, the Shinigami saluted. Byakuya had felt that Ryatsu. Renji was at the vice-captain's meeting, but it was far beyond what anyone in his division could handle. He had already felt 4 Ryatsus vanish under it, members of his own division. Before Byakuya could even exit his own office, a Shinigami, split cleanly in 2, flew into the room and splattered against the far wall directly behind Byakuya's desk, staining the wall with blood. Yo, I take it you're the big shot captain around here? Came a loud, raucous voice, exactly the polar opposite of Byakuya. Byakuya put his hand on the hilt of his zanpakuto. A figure walked up to directly underneath the doorway, and randomly slashed off the top half of the wall above the door, apparently so he could fit in the room. The first thing Byakuya noticed about him was that he was very tall. So tall, he could barely fit in the office without hitting his head on the ceiling. He lugged around a bizarre zanpakuto, double-bladed sides, that looked very much like the crescent moon. Sup, I'm the Sexta Espada, Neutra Gilga. Byakuya clinged onto a few facets of that introduction. 1 was the number. Sexta. The 6th Espada out of 10, according to Soul Society's very limited information on the Espada. Not exactly a low number within the group, but by no means high. The other thing he focused on was more important. Espada? You mean like the top 10 Arrancar that followed Aizen? Soul Society assumed that your organization disappeared when Aizen was defeated. I didn't realize that you still operated without a leader. Neutra scoffed. As if a bitch-ass Shinigami could ever be our leader. Ever since Aizen died, we had a new leader, though we've always sorta followed him regardless even when Aizen was in control. But, enough about us, let's talk about you. Neutra said, pointing his crescent blade at Byakuya. Ever since I got here, it's been nothing but wussas, wimps, and pussies. No one here has been able to give me even remotely a good fight. But, you's a captain, ain't ya? That means that you're the cream of the crop here in Soul Society. Maybe you could give me the fight I'm looking for. Neutra inquired, licking his lips and showing off his 6 tattoo. Filth. Byakuya muttered in disdain, drawing his zanpakuto and getting into a full ready position. You are clearly an enemy, you have shown your true colors when you cowardly invaded and shed blood within our court. What's important here is not that you can get a fight out of this, but rather that you are crushed with the shortest amount of effort and time available at my disposal. Arrancar, he finished. Neutra smirked. That so? Well, don't think it's going to be that easy. Shinigami. Neutra released his heavy Ryatsu, and Byakuya's eyes widened as it blanketed the area and Neutra swung his zanpakuto within the narrow office. The building collapsed in on itself from the powerful blow, before 2 figures climbed out of the rubble during the aftereffects. Byakuya took up footing on a nearby roof, while Neutra watched him from down below on the street. You show no restraint, Arrancar. That will be your downfall. Neutra didn't say anything, instead just opting to swing his blade around, crashing it into the building that Byakuya was standing on. "Kurako!" Yukite cried, as he flash-stepped his way inside the 8th Division, and inside Kurako Shuensue's personal quarters. Kurako himself was lounged upon the roof of the building, looking solemnly at the destruction that Seirete was undergoing. "Yukite? What are you doing lying around? Why aren't you preparing for battle?" Yukite asked. Kurako sighed. Nanao-chan already fulfilled the necessary orders and mobilized the division, even before she went on to the vice-captain's meeting. She's really a hard worker, she is, and so organized. There's nothing for me to do in the meantime. Going out and searching for someone to fight on my own doesn't really sit well with me, so I'm just contemplating the phenomenon of war, and how we are dragged into it yet again. He explained casually. Even still, there are Shinigami down there dying, the least you could do is. No need to waste our time chasing down average Erincar. We've caught ourselves a big fish already, so there's no need to do anything. Kurako explained, seemingly noticing a presence for the first time. Yukite noticed it a mere seconds after Kurako, as an Erincar entered the area that the two captains were standing in. "An Erincar?" Yukite said in surprise. "Not just any Erincar. Have you felt her Ryatsu? It's pretty strong. I'm going to have my work cut out for me on this one." "It's a woman." Yukite outright sweat dropped. "Are you sure you're going to able to do this?" he asked, his faith in Kurako apparently very low. Kurako wasn't fazed. "Normally, I don't like the thought of fighting women. But then again, I don't like the thought of fighting at all. But sometimes you have to force yourself to do things that you really don't want to do." Kurako picked up his two Zanpakuto, as Tyr Haribel stared up at the two senior captains on the roof. Kurako flashed down to meet her, a soft smile on his face. "Well, we have a lovely young lady that has come to meet me. It must be my lucky day," Kurako said, as Haribel regarded him calmly. Yukite smacked his hand to his forehead, exasperated by Kurako's wily antics. It didn't help that Haribel wore quite the provocative outfit to boot. Haribel neither reacted with anger nor disdain at Kurako's greeting. In fact, she didn't react to him at all. It was almost like he wasn't there to her, and to him it was like he was talking to a brick wall. "Hello?" Kurako asked, a little confused by the lack of response. Now it was Haribel's time to look at him with disdain. "You're one of the 13 captains of Seirete. Somehow I'm pretty disappointed," she said, not bothering to hide the condescension that was in her voice. "But..." She placed her finger on the edge of the hilt of her Zanpakuto, slipping it through the loop and flipping it out of its sheath. She twirled it around before catching it, the odd hollow sword looking useless for battle, even though it was deadly in the wielder's hands. "Regardless, you are a member of the 13 elite Shinigami. I will have to crush you with full force," she said, at Kurako. "Man, I got one who's just so eager to fight. Unfortunately, I can't just sit around and chat with a lovely lady this time either, no matter how much I would like to." Kurako paused. "And I just hate getting cut up." Haribel didn't give him any time to talk after that. Rather, she charged up Yellow Ryatsu into the hollow part of his sword, and used Sonido to get underneath her opponent's guard and slam her powered-up Zanpakuto across his face. Kurako grunted and desperately drew both of Zanpakutos at the side, crossing them over each other to block the strong attack from Haribel. He grinned awkwardly. "And I get the feeling I'm gonna get cut up a lot here." Yukite watched from his vantage point on the roof. The girl was strong, very very strong. Much stronger than he would have ever expected an Erincar to be. "Aren't you gonna help him?" "Of course not. TW-on-1 isn't very fair, and Kurako seems to be doing just fine on his own." "Whatever, I don't really care," said the strange voice from beside Yukite. Yukite seemed to notice for the first time that he was talking to someone who shouldn't have been there, and he bounced from his seat as he saw two Erincar, one that looked like an adult man, and another that looked like a preteen girl, sitting right next to him. "How did you get here?" Yukitake asked. "Well, I'm supposed to be going around killing people and looking for some key, but I don't really like that kind of stuff. I was hoping to just take it easy while I watch one of the others do their thing," Stark said. "And it's because of that crap that you got demoted. You keep up that lazy attitude and you'll get kicked out of the Espada altogether," Lilynette said from behind him, smacking Stark in the back of the head, making him grunt as he fell flat on his face. "That might be what I want at this point, but I can't ask for another demotion or anything," Stark responded. Lilynette continued to yell at him, while Yukitake stood there watching the scene, completely perplexed. "You're an Espada?" "Unfortunately." "Then, who's leading this attack?" "Aizen is dead." "You don't need to worry about that right now. I would go and help your friend if I were you. I may not want to fight or anything, but all of my comrades do, including her." He pointed down towards Haribel, who was clashing with Kiraku. "She's strong. That Captain-san isn't going to last very long." "That's okay, Kiraku is strong too, but the question is if you're really going to remain idle," Yukitake said, slightly suspicious. Stark laid his head into the roof of the building. "Fine. If you really want to fight, then that's the way it's going to be," he said, climbing to his feet and stretching before yawning. "Lilynette, don't run off and do your own thing. Stay out of range, and if I need you, I will call," Stark said completely seriously, facing Yukitake while placing his hand on his zanpakuto. "Fine. I got it," Lilynette said, just as serious as Stark, backing away from the powerful opponents. Yukitake didn't look pleased, or excited, or even angry at Stark. "I need to ask you something. Of all the Arrancar I've met, most of them are petty, rude, sadistic, and cruel. Neither you nor the girl down there seem like any of those things. And yet your group is ransacking Soul Society. Why are you doing this?" Stark's expression didn't change. "I don't believe that's any of your business," Stark said, as his zanpakuto was drawn fully out of its sheath. Yukitake meanwhile was looking cautiously at Lilynette, like he didn't feel he could fight with her around. "I'm not going to send her away, you know. She can handle herself in a fight," Stark said, noting his discomfort. While that exchange was occurring, Haribel and Kiraku continued to duel down below. Without ever turning away from the battle, Kiraku noticed Stark. Where'd that guy come from? I guess it doesn't matter, but did I hear that girl mention something about the Espada? Those 10 Arrancar who were the elite of Aizen's forces?" "I take that silence as a yes," Kiraku said cheekily. There are 10 of you, and 2 of them have come to see us. You seem powerful, if I'm to be honest, but I can tell that you're not the ones leading their operation. If I had to guess, I'd say that the guy up there is number 2. His eyes trailed up for a second as there was a lull in the battle. "Because I'm going to guess that you're number 3, you know," he finished, looking at Haribel. Haribel didn't respond or even say anything to him, instead placing her hand on her very short zipper. If it was any other time than an invaded Soul Society, the slightly perverted captain would get a little excited at what Haribel was about to do, but as is, his expression didn't change in the slightest. She completely unzipped her already short top, revealing her mask fragments, which covered the bottom half of her face, her neck, and the top part of her breasts. On the bottom half of her right breast, a small 5 was tattooed there. That seemed to surprise Kiraku somewhat. "Number 5, huh? That's not what I was expecting, really. With your skills, I thought you would at least be a little higher ranked than that, but I was wrong. I guess it goes to show that your army isn't one to be messed with," he commented. "Really? This is hardly my full power right now. If I'm fighting with all my strength, you will know," Haribel commented. "Kuratsuchi Taicho." A researcher of the 12th Division cried for his captain, as a purple ink-like substance splashed onto him. The researcher cried out in alarm as a clone of him grew from where the substance splattered against him. H. What is this? He screamed. He wasn't the only one who was afraid of the inky material. All of the living, remaining researchers in the room balked as they were hit by the substance, clones of them popping out every which way. At a closer glance, they could tell differences between each other. The carbon clones of all the researchers had no pupils, along with bizarre symbols around their eyes. Be careful. We don't know what they're capable of yet. Akon shouted above the din, staring across at 3 clones of his own. Thankfully, Zanpakuto weren't allowed in the lab, but not even Kuratsuchi Mayuri could take away their Kido. Then again, no one really knew if the clones could copy their abilities yet. Akon grit his teeth in frustration, looking to where the cause of all their problems was. The Arrancar that had invaded was sitting atop of the main monitor in the room, and Akon could tell he was a lot different than before, and a lot more disgusting too. Akon had never personally seen an Arrancar's release, and after this display he hoped to never see one again. And that was something coming from a researcher like him. He was supposed to be used to things that made lesser people squeamish. He had released his Zanpakuto in an interesting way, but his release was over now, and he was fully in his resurrection. His Arrancar robe had changed. The top half disappeared to become a hard lavender material that seemed to be armor, while the bottom half of his robes became stained with a strange purple material. His mask fragments had changed from the glasses he wore to be a band across his forehead, which curled under his left eye while connecting to shell-like plates over his ears. 4 wings were jutting from his back, each of them dripping a repulsive red tendril. Similar purple tendrils were found on Sale's fingertips, forearms, and on the ends of his hair. He had sprayed the black liquid from his back, and seemed to be able to manipulate it at will. You like that? Ever since I've undergone training, I've been able to manipulate my excretions at will. Let's see how you enjoy fighting yourselves while I sit back and watch, he laughed. Akon cringed as a clone of himself fired a blast of Kido, destroying a monitor behind him as Akon dodged. The clone reached into his robe, pulling out a number of scalpels. All around him, clones of other researchers were doing the same. Shit, I forgot. We're not completely unarmed around here in the first place. Akon thought, as he dodged a thrown scalpel. Another unlucky researcher got pinned to the wall by about a dozen scalpels. Third seat Akon. What do we do? We can't fight him, the researcher who had been pinned to the wall exclaimed. Sale watched boredly as he struggled. At least give a little more energy when you resist. It's a little boring killing someone when they don't even scream in agony. Sale commented, still not getting up from his perch. Rin, get to the door. Forget the punishment later, I will take full responsibility. Just get Kuratsuchi Taicho out of his specimen lab and alert him to the situation. Hurry! Akon shouted at Rin, who was in the far corner of the room. He was the only one of the researchers who had not been cloned yet. I don't think I can do that at the moment, senpai, he said, cowering. Rin, you little bastard. Another, well-built researcher pointed out. Now's not the time for that, Rin. Get over there and alert Kuratsuchi Taicho. That's an order. Akon said, this time much more forcefully. That seemed to kick Rin into shape. Yes, sir. Rin shouted, forcing himself to move from his hiding spot. Sale watched him with a slight amount of interest, like he was pondering something. The captain of this division seems to be in the vicinity, though if he joins the fight now things could get a little difficult. Should I allow him to alert his captain, or take care of all of them first? Sale pondered. Sale seemed to decide on something, and shot out one of his wings that heading straight towards Rin. Rin saw it coming, and froze in his tracks, looking at the oncoming attack like a deer in headlights. Another researcher got in front of Rin, using his body and a tiny scalpel to try and keep the tendril from attacking Rin. However, Sale didn't wrap the researcher in his wings, but instead just lightly tapped him before pulling it back. He hissed in annoyance as he missed his intended target, but one of the red tendrils on his wings began to swell. He touched it lightly, and the tendril spit out a small doll, similar in appearance to the researcher he just touched. Sale took the doll in his hand and placed it in his back pocket for the time being. He threw out his arms in a wide, flamboyant display, allowing all 4 of his wings to shoot forward. More researchers put themselves between Rin and Sale, even as the tendrils touched them, and Sale drew back to create more and more dolls that he could control. Finally, only Akon and Rin were the only ones in the room not under Sale's control. Before long, Sale had pockets filled with voodoo dolls, but he wasn't concerned about that. He shot out his wings one last time. Rin was just about to make it to the other part of the lab, but then his entire world went dark. "Are you going, Mayuri-sama?" Kuratsuchi Nimyu asked. Mayuri was hunched over something, reaching into a crawlspace while seemingly pulling something out of nowhere. "Of course. Arankar are invading Soul Society. For once in my life, specimens are actually coming to me rather than me going to them. It is the perfect opportunity to pick up some intriguing specimens for my lab," he said, clutching his zanpakuto in his hands. Mayuri looked over to his right, where the door led to his specimen lab. Hopefully he would be able to stock up on something new. He turned back to the main monitor, the central database of the entire institution. "Nimyu, you're going to come with me in case I need a decoy. I'll leave Akon in charge of the entire facility," he ordered, attaching his zanpakuto in the very odd place that he kept it. "Yes, Mayuri-sama." Before either of them could move one step, the door to Mayuri's quarters burst open. Mayuri sneered at the blatant disrespect that one of his underlings was showing, but he eerily and calmly watched as Rin stepped into the room. "Kuratsuchi-sama, we are under attack," Rin said, with a surprisingly emotionless and hollow voice. Mayuri pondered what he should do, but surprisingly he didn't blow up at the young Shinigami. "I see. And why did you interrupt me over such a minor detail?" Mayuri asked him. Rin said nothing in response, keeping his same blank expression and mannerisms. Out of nowhere, Rin pulled a scalpel out of his back pocket, preparing to strike Mayuri with it. However, Mayuri had seen this coming for a long time, and before Rin could do anything he had stabbed him straight in the stomach with his sealed zanpakuto. "Seriously? Did they think they could fool me with this?" Mayuri commented out loud, as the clone burst into black liquid. Mayuri didn't look surprised, he could spot the differences from a mile away. There was that symbol around his eyes, the lack of pupils, and the overall emotionless demeanor. He threw the door open a little wider with a great amount of force, walking through 2 more unoccupied labs before picking up on a few sounds. There was definitely a battle going on, though no one had bothered to alert him. Didn't they know they were supposed to tell him if their division is under attack? "Never mind that enter and I'll kill you" sign that was always posted above his own personal lab. He hissed as he threw open the door to the lab where Sale had taken up residence. Strewn across the floor were the dead bodies of many of his underlings, including the real Rin and Akon. The only living thing in the room was the Arankar sitting in the center, wings folded as he waited patiently. Neither Mayuri nor Nimyu paid any attention to the bodies, or how horrifically killed they were. Some of them were bleeding in peculiar places, like they had their organs ruptured without any physical trauma. Sale had one last scientist crushed in his wings, before he let him go, flopping to the ground uselessly. He eyed the new arrival, taking special note of the Haori that adorned him. Mayuri stared him down back, and a sinister smile spread across his face. Sale actually had a light frown on his face, as Mayuri fondled his zanpakuto. "Arankar," he hissed. "A captain. The 12th Division's captain, huh? I've been waiting to flush you out, but I always figured it wouldn't be that easy." "Really? I've been looking to head out for a while now, and see if I can find any interesting specimens. And I must say, you look particularly interesting. I don't think I've ever seen anyone who was able to kill in such a manner. It makes me truly wonder how you did it," Mayuri commented, to Sale's disinterest. One of his wings was fidgeting. "Too bad you won't be able to take me as a specimen. It's a shame, I myself would like to get a Shinigami captain in my research lab, but I'm afraid I'm under strict orders to kill whoever I encounter. You're going to die here, Kuratsuchi Mayuri. Sale shouted. You have a rather bland personality, don't you? Though it seems that you are the scientific equivalent of the Arrancar, considering you came here first and seem to have an interest in research. Though, you have destroyed much valuable equipment within my division, so I'm afraid I can't let that slide. I'll be taking you in now, with the method that requires the least amount of effort. Mayuri said, drawing his Zanpakuto. Rip. Ashisoji Jizo. Sale's eyes narrowed as the captain released his shurikai, which turned into a bizarre, golden trident with a baby-like face near its bottom. At first glance, Sale couldn't figure out what it did. But the information he had on Mayuri's shurikai told him that Ashisoji Jizo's shurikai was a type of paralysis. Sale sent out his wings towards the captain, but withdrew when Mayuri sliced his Zanpakuto forward. It wouldn't do to get it paralyzed. He predicted Mayuri's straight pattern, before moving his wing to the side to try and get Mayuri from a different angle. Mayuri looked at the oncoming wing, jumping back a little bit as he halted his attack. He pulled on his mechanical ear, drawing the blade out from its socket and twirling it at the oncoming wing. It sliced off one of the tendrils, allowing a purple liquid to spurt forth from the severed tendril. Shit! Mayuri said, as the liquid actually shot from the severed tendril and splattered all over the place in an unexpected attack. He used Shuinpa to get around all over the globs of liquid, but he was kept distracted by that one thing. While Mayuri was busy dodging, Sale appeared directly behind him. However, before he could attack Mayuri, Nimue got between the two. While he managed to touch both of them with one of his wings, Mayuri actually finished dodging and got ready to counterattack, slashing at Sale's shoulder just as the dolls of both of them were being formed. Blood gushed from Sale's wound as he cursed and withdrew. The tendril on his wings swelled and burst, and with his good arm he held both the Mayuri and Nimue dolls in his hand. The paralysis had already taken effect in his left shoulder, meaning that it was disabled for at least the rest of the fight. Mayuri stared at him blankly, head tilting as he saw the dolls. He hadn't seen any of his particularly abilities yet, so he was fascinated by what the Arrancar could do. The Novena Espada wasted no words, instead using one of his fingers to flick the doll of Mayuri lightly. Mayuri felt the light bit of force across his forehead, putting a finger to where it was irritated. He looked back at Sale, who was now grinning despite his injury. Don't tell me. Mayuri said, as Sale used his free arm to pry open the tops on both dolls. Inside, he could see their organs, colored and labeled for him to pick up. He plucked out a red ball from Mayuri's doll, holding it in his fingers. Don't come any closer, now. Take one step away from that spot, and I'll crush both your hearts where you stand. There's something I need to look for around here, and I can't have you mess that up. Sale threatened. On the outside, Mayuri looked submissive and subservient, but on the inside he was scheming, looking for a way out of this, or how he could use Sale's mercy to his advantage. I'm going to go in your specimen lab, Sale announced. He looked at Nimue very quickly, but on the inside he was seething. How dare an Arrancar try to set foot into his specimen lab? With his fingers still on Mayuri's heart, he walked out the research lab, where he couldn't see them. Maybe he was trying to bluff, but whatever the case, Mayuri called it. Nimue, get me item number 4544 from the biology lab section E5 and bring them here immediately. Also, remove all vials of antidote stored within the facility. Mayuri ordered. Yes, Mayuri-sama. And you? Once you have returned with the dummy organs, I will head to the specimen lab and resume my fight there. I will begin compiling my list of information on the Arrancar immediately, he said, a grin entering his face. Magnificent! Sale exclaimed as he entered Mayuri's specimen lab, by far the most spacious and most packed room within the entire facility. And it was a scientist's dream come true. The walls were packed to the brim with creatures preserved in formaldehyde, and there were even some Shinigami, human, and Quincy corpses hung upon the walls. Some of them were preserved, and some of them were fresh. Things weren't going his way in that battle, but now he could turn it around completely. Not to mention, this was the most likely place where he could find the key. He stood at the center, marveling at the specimens and actually zoning out for a while there. Magnificent, isn't it? I'll have you know that you'll be a part of it soon enough. Mayuri's voice sounded from behind Sail, and he saw the captain hobble into the room. Nimue was not with him. Oh, back so soon. I thought I told you to stay put, lest in case I do this. Sail said. He still had the doll in his reach, and without wasting any words, he plucked the heart from the Mayuri doll and crushed it right before his very eyes. Nothing happened. Sail grunted in surprise. What? He took another, less fatal organ from the doll and crushed it too. Again, Mayuri was unaffected by the entire thing, and Sail was getting frustrated. He tossed the doll down to the ground, stomping on the thing, breaking replica organs that should have been affecting the real thing. Why? Why won't you die? Sail said. Seriously? You give me a few moments alone in my own facility, and I can figure out your weaknesses and how to exploit them. All I did was replace my real organs with dummies. Dummies? You actually have dummy organs in stock here? Sail asked incredulously. Are you touched in the head? Of course I have dummy organs in stock. Mayuri replied. Sail grit his teeth in anger, before he cast the doll to the side, trying to figure out a new way to attack. He opened the slit on his back where the black cloning liquid poured from, rushing Mayuri with Sonido. Mayuri slashed with his Zanpakuto, but Sail hopped into mid-air, blocking the blade with his sandal. Ha! 10 years ago I would never dream of doing this. But, Naruto is a slave driver with his training, and he always knew that my direct combat abilities were lacking. Damn you! Mayuri shouted. Using his free hand, he took his ear scythe and threw it at Sail, ripping off one of his wings and forcing him back. The tendril crashed to the ground, and Sail used his good hand to clutch the wound. Son of a bitch! He muttered to himself. He could have probably ended this fight with just his first release, but he wanted to finish this with the least amount of time and effort possible. You're starting to annoy me, Kuratsuchi Mayuri. I don't like dealing with annoying opponents, especially when they claim to be just as brilliant as myself. Sail exclaimed, backing into the middle of the room. He lifted his one good arm, charging up his Ryatsu. Resurrección Fornicaris, Segunda Etapa. He muttered, as pink Ryatsu exploded around the specimen room. Mayuri's eyes widened. He knew about the Arrancar Resurrección. He didn't know that there was another stage to it. Fascinating. Arrancars have a second release. Who knows the type of abilities that they could have, he said, intrigued by the possibilities. Sail was emerging from his cloud of Ryatsu, meanwhile. When he got out, he was different, even by his first release's standards. While his mask fragments remained the same, his eyes were golden yellow, pupils rounded. His hair was slightly longer, reaching down to his chest. When he moved, the purple tendrils on the ends of the strands of hair whipped around. His purple fingernails got even longer and his sleeves disappeared completely, dozens of purple tendrils dripping off his skin itself. His four wings split into 16, red tendrils shifting into the back of them as they whipped around behind Sail, almost like a wheel or a moving halo. The bottom half of his robe from his first release had vanished completely, turning into an armored worm-like tail. His hollow hole became visible for the first time, being where his crotch once was. And Mayuri was grinning like a madman. Interesting. This is your segunda etapa, as you call it. He commented, taking his blade out. Sail only grinned, a horribly remarkable sinister grin that put even Mayuri's to shame. You won't find it interesting for long. Sail said. Instead of the slightly feminine voice that Sail always had, it was a bit more guttural, which fit his bizarre second release. Black liquid dribbled out from both his mouth and back, as all the tendrils along his body liquefied. Even from his hollow hole and parts of his tail black excretions of liquid emerged. He spread his arms out and grinned through a mouthful of liquid. The black liquid formed into many different globules, before Sail brought his arms together. Like they had a life of their own, the black globes of liquids flew in every which direction, splattering all over containers of dead animals and specimens within the lab. Mayuri was outraged by this. "What? What do you think you're doing?" he cried at Sail, after watching him deface his life's work. "Maybe you shouldn't have let him go to the specimen lab in the first place." There were not many things that could catch Kuratsuchi Mayuri off guard. He was a scientist by nature, he was used to disgusting and horrible things, and even an opponent far beyond his strength wasn't something he lost his shit to. With that said, seeing his dead specimens suddenly come back to life and head for one was one of the few things that did. "What is this?" he exclaimed, watching the animals unfasten the lids off their jars and crawl onto the floor. Even the Shinigami on the wall had used their Zanpakuto to cut their bondings and flop onto the floor. Mayuri looked around himself, debating on whether or not he should use his Zanpakuto on his precious specimens. They were rapidly gaining on him. Snakes and other reptiles, birds, hollows, Shinigami, and even creatures that any normal person couldn't even describe were edging in on him at quite the fast rate. And the thing they had in common, they all had the same markings around their eyes. "Yes, you have fallen victim to my possession. If I touch anything, living or dead, with my special black liquid, they instantly become under my control. I can even bring them back to life and force them to do my bidding. How does it feel to be held down by the very own creatures you've researched and collected over the years? Does it hurt? You, how dare you?" Mayuri managed to get out, as he was bitten by several of his animals. One of the Quincy was firing up his bow. "Yes! Yes!" Writhed in pain and suffering. Sail quacked maniacally, spreading out more liquid around the specimen jars. "I knew I could work this room to my advantage. If I had stayed in the other one any longer, you would have found a way to defeat me, and I can't have that." Mayuri was running out of options. He hadn't been able to become fully prepared for this fight, despite his dummy organs. He just didn't have the time to research everything about Sail. He was still in his Shirkai, but he was getting ganged up on by his own specimens. His Zanpakuto didn't have an attack that covered a wide amount of distance. His mind worked towards one option, but this was a precious place to him. He couldn't use a destructive force like his Bankai here, especially with specimens that have been untouched. But it looked like he didn't have any options. "Damn you to hell!" He grimaced, so lowly that Sail couldn't even hear it. He sliced one of his specimens in half with his Zanpakuto, feeling a little bit of a sting at the fact that he just destroyed one of his own possessions. "Bankai. Well, looks like Sail is going wild over there. Didn't really expect that from him." Naruto muttered, as he made his way through the streets of Serete. He was en route to the 1st Division's barracks, but before he went there, he noticed something pretty interesting in the sky. There was Berrigan, walking along in the sky with his 6 Fraction behind him, 2 of which were carrying his throne for him. He always liked to pretend he was still a king, but that wasn't why Naruto was so interested in him. Berrigan kept on stealing glances at Naruto as he passed by, looking in his direction every few seconds. Berrigan seemed to be heading to the 11th Division for the time being. Maybe it had something to do with the strategy. His abilities would be perfect for the 11th Division, with physical combat against him a big no-no. "So, he's up to something, huh?" Naruto muttered to himself. He would follow Berrigan for the time being. Out of all the Espada, Berrigan was the least loyal to Naruto, and Naruto knew why too. They were very similar, they had similar pasts, similar lives of ruling. And their history had crossed on more than one occasion. Not to mention, Berrigan was an ancient hollow with a wealth of experience, who thought he was the one who should be ruling. Yamamoto could wait right now. Naruto needed to see if the old hollow was going to be a thorn in his side one last time. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed this what if and want to see next part of it, comment down below and let me know. Also share this video with your friends. See you in the next video. Peace.